Good afternoon. Good morning to some of you joining us. Good late afternoon to some of you joining us. My name is John Carroll. I'm the CEO and founder of the Service Council, and welcome to today's In-Service podcast presentation. I am incredibly pleased to be joined by advisory board member of the Service Council, president and co-founder of CareAR, a Xerox company, Sam Waicberg. Sam, thank you very much for joining today's discussion. Really appreciate the time.
Hey, John, honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Outstanding. So we'll get an introduction into Sam and his organization, and then we'll get into today's discussion. The topic of today's session is the impact of instructional guidance on experience, a really important one. And we plan to review some of the latest research data from our ongoing research coverage, including the voice of the field service engineer. And Sam will be sharing his viewpoints, working with many of the customers they're influencing and impacting across the globe. But before we get in, just a couple quick housekeeping items. We want to make this as interactive as possible, and we encourage you, if you have comments, questions, reactions, if you're trying to solve issues at your own organization, or learn more about the groundbreaking technology that Sam and his organization is bringing to market, please feel free to submit those via LinkedIn if you're listening there. If you're on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, we have a social team that can respond to you and engage you in the right channel. So please do engage, and we'll try to make sure we fit your questions, comments, and reactions into today's discussion. Secondly, this session will be recorded. So if you'd like to access this as a resource moving forward, you can visit our website or any of our social channels, and you can gain access to today's session. Without further adu, let's go ahead and jump into a very important and timely topic, the impact of instructional guidance on experience. But before we do, Sam Waicberg, once again, co-founder and president of CareAR, a Xerox company, joining us today. Sam, could you introduce yourself, something personal about yourself, a little bit about your professional background, and then we'll jump into the company introduction.
Happy to, John. I love the way you're starting. So let me start with some personal, and I'll dive into professional. So interestingly enough, just came upon my 29-year anniversary, wedding anniversary, and I have four grown kids, and glad to say they're all out of the house. So that's personal. Professional, I've been in the communication software space for a long time, pretty much the majority of my career, and I've been riding that that tide ever since. So and that brings me to where we are today.
Outstanding. Sam, four grown kids out of the house. You give me hope that I can survive this with four kids at my own house. So thank you. Outstanding. Sure. So for many across the field service and broader service management space, CareAR has become a very recognizable brand. But for those listening audience members who are not familiar, could you talk a little bit about the company and its genesis and evolution, and some of the customers you're impacting or industries you're impacting? It'd be great for you to sort of introduce the company to our listening audience today.
Sure. So as I mentioned, my background's in the software communication space, but really I've been working across technologies that enable communication, collaboration, as well as content, right? And so really, to be honest with you, one day I had a problem, and I had something in my house that I needed fixing, and I came into a scenario where I needed to call somebody, and I needed something fixed like right away. And the response was, when I got to the call center, well, we'll have somebody out there in a week. They'll be there between these times, and that's the best we can do. I'm like, okay, fine. They get there, they show up like they said. And it took them, minutes to fix the problem, and it took me weeks to schedule, days, weeks to schedule the appointment. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way. And the response was, well, yeah, now that I saw it, now that I see it, right, I knew what to do. And I'm like, you would have, wouldn't there be a way to send me a link, do some kind of like a FaceTime on steroids, and just kind of walk me through solving the problem? And they said, yeah, that's a great idea. I wish something like that existed, but it didn't. So, it'll be $99, please. So it inspired me, motivated me to really take this idea and run with it. And that was really how CareAR started. And, so today CareAR is an augmented reality and AI service experience platform that delivers contextual information in the time of need. Okay. And when we talk about contextual information, what we're really talking about is a combination of visual context and content with context, all brought together in a very digital, visual, and seamless experience. And we do that for enterprises across a lot of industries who are really looking to transform their service experience.
I love that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
I always enjoy hearing founders' stories and out of the garage and
it's
what
yeah,
happened to when and it's good to hear straight from you, how this came about and very relevant. And this category of technology is becoming more and more important as we start to see customers evolve and wanting them, they want to be met where they want to be met, right? That remote
they do.
experience is becoming more and more common. So you're filling a real
They,
big void in the space, and kudos for all the growth and what you've done there. Let's go ahead and get into our first question, if we could, Sam. So,
sure.
serviceability challenges. According to the 2023 Voice of the Field Service Engineer survey, which is currently in market, we have just over 1,500 technicians. So this is the one time a year we go to the front line, which we believe
Hmm.
is probably our most important survey, learning what the front line is challenged by and what they spend most of their day doing, and how could we enable them better. Well, 88% of responding technicians and engineers indicate repair and break fix as the primary aspect of their work. And an equivalent 88% believe that the knowledge required to service products is increasing, followed by 86% that believe or indicate that work requires greater technology knowledge, and 3 out of 4, or 75%, indicating that products being worked on are becoming more complex. So the
Hmm.
challenge of the job is increasing in terms of the knowledge requirements and the capability requirements. Can you discuss how service has become more complex in nature from your point of view?
Yeah, and but you're right. The technology out there is becoming more complicated, more complex. But some of the solutions like IoT and other things are becoming more sophisticated, right? So this kind of creates this perfect storm, John,
Yeah.
where we find ourselves really playing a key role, because there's also the dichotomy of the type of people too. You've got people that have been in the industry 20, 30 years, right? They're accustomed to doing work a certain way. They're
Sure.
like, more paper, right? And you've got a new set of workers coming in who rather YouTube something and want to use their phone. So there's that kind of dichotomy. And then when you also look at another aspect, and I know you and I have talked about this, is really, so how do they spend most of their time? Okay,
Yeah.
and this also addresses another piece of this, where over 50% of the time is spent across the voice of the field tech cuts across travel, finding information, and finding the right people to help
Yeah.
them do their task, right? So over 50% of the time is just spent on doing that. Now you have 50% or less trying to deal with new tech and actually do the work that they're hired to do, and that's what they love to do.
Sure.
But I would say, the other aspect that's going on besides legacy products to new products, so there's a whole kind of skill gap training that has to go on there. Okay,
Yeah.
which by the way is playing a much more relevant part in what we're seeing today, is training. And I have a feeling we're gonna come back to this topic of training.
For sure.
But the other part is around the customer expectation. It's more immediate, right? We call this like the Netflix effect. I want just immediate gratification.
Yeah.
And then the third piece is that when we also look at what's going on, which is around the Great Resignation, right? There's less talent out there, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens is organizations are, no pun intended, augmenting their their field resources, their service employees with third-party contractors.
Yeah.
Okay, so you
Yep.
create another issue because they're not trained in how these organizations want to perform certain tasks. So that creates yet another set of challenges, right? There's a lot of moving pieces here, right? There's a big challenge on how to provide a very consistent and accurate level of service. And that's what you're experiencing.
Indeed. Yeah, you bring up so many great points, Sam, and we're going to build on that. First and foremost, though, I'd like to say thank you and welcome to our international audience, Mokhtar Diallo, joining us from
Okay.
Mali in Africa. My goodness,
All right.
welcome. That's outstanding. The diversity of our community continues to grow, and we love welcoming the viewpoints from an international audience. So thank you for listening and tuning in. Hopefully this is a valuable session. So you talk about the Great Resignation, you talk about some of the talent crisis and the dependency on this contingent or extended labor network, which we're hearing more and more about, and maintaining quality, consistency of quality in terms of the brand experience and the associated experience with the brand when you start to extend out of necessity, quite honestly, to these extended labor pockets. And one of the things that we were looking at in terms of the data was field service engineers are still non-committal to the career. So
Hmm.
last year, 54% of the aggregate population that responded indicated that they were not planning to be a technician for the duration of their career. This year it's dropped. We've seen some improvement year over year, so it's only 47% now, which is, goodness. But when we start to look at, the Great Resignation is just going to happen naturally, but there's still an engagement crisis in that middle pocket. We actually isolated Gen Y, which we call ages 25 to 44, and 80% of Gen Y are not committed to the role. So there's still an engagement crisis that's much worse than last year, to a tune of 15-point increase. So there's not only this resignation crisis, there's also this engagement crisis that's persisting, and it's challenged because it's a tough job, right? It's a rigorous job. There's a lot of time spent on paperwork and admin. There's a lot of
Right.
isolation. There's a lot of pressure from management and customers. You're walking in oftentimes to some really heated issues that are happening within the customer relationship. What are some of the things that you're hearing in terms of supportability opportunities, in terms of improving a day in the life of a technician?
Right. Look, I just want to say it's a super hard job. It's like the
Yeah.
fireman, you know, and there's a certain set of people who walk into a building, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
most of us like run away,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yours truly. But there's a lot of pressure, right? You're dealing
Yeah.
with both sides. You're coming from a lot of times the vendor or the manufacturer, and then you've got to deal with a customer who's irate, and they could be losing thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars every minute or hour that something's down, right? So a
Yep.
lot of pressure, and they're thrown into these situations. They get burnout, and
Yep.
they decide to just tap out. Um, what we're doing, we really feel helps in that area. I mean, if think about what I mentioned. So what we're doing is we're providing, one way to say it is we're providing contextual information at the time of need. Another way that I also like to refer to this is that we're making expertise instantly accessible at the time of need, right? And so they're both the same. Expertise is access to either a live human via visual context, kind of like what we're doing here, but purpose built.
Yep.
And the other is around content with context, which it takes a form of instructional, guidance that somebody can use to follow a set of self-guided instructions. A
Mhm.
lot of times as a precursor to connecting with a live human, right? And so both cases, we're serving up on an on-demand basis, instantly at the time of need. That's contextual. That's very relevant to the task at hand on the device that they choose to use. Kind of like what you said before, kind of where and how they want that. And so we're giving them help,
Yep.
right? We're giving them, information, knowledge when they need it to allow them to do their jobs, better. So a lot of times they don't have to be, the expert on everything, but they have certain set of foundational skills that if they had some guidance, whether that's from afar or in front of them that through instructions, right, they could solve that problem on their own much more effectively. And so that's how we're kind of aiding in the help of these field workers. And sometimes this comes into the form of what I just mentioned. Other is training, like on the spot training, which we're starting to see play more and more of a role. But I think a combination of these things really lends itself to helping to take the friction out of the tough job that the technicians in the field have to perform on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We to your point, we hear a lot of focus on upskilling and reskilling with respect to making the information necessary to be effective in the job. And AR is a critical enabler of
Yeah.
that. So we're hearing a
Yeah.
lot more about that.
The other thing, just to build on that, is I've also feel we're going to get into this too, is content.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Content, the type of content is really becoming more immersive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So a lot of organizations have content already, and that's great. We leverage that too in kind of what we do and how we create these instructional experiences for the technicians. But so 2D type of content, paper,
Yep.
video, great, right?
Yep.
But some of the more immersive content, like that in the form of a digital twin, 3D, visualization, right? All can really enable and empower those individuals to really have a better context in what it is, how to address that problem. And so I think that some of the advancements in content also plays a role for really helping these individuals or these roles perform their tasks better.
Outstanding. Do you mind if we can circle back to the capabilities and the frontline? And
Yeah.
what sources of data, what are you hearing from your customers, your market segments, in terms of the sources of data that the frontline is craving? What are the areas that the frontline is looking for?
So they want the how-tos.
Yeah.
They want information how to so what is so it's really the context is what they want. And this if I go back to the problem that we see today, and by the way, it's still out there from when we started. So if the day in the life is you've got dispatch, field service management type of systems that do a great job getting the right person to the right place at the right time, right?
Hmm.
Presumably with the right part. But so they orchestrate the scheduling, the optimization of that resource, of who needs to go, what do they need to do, and when and where do they need to be. Okay.
Yeah.
But what was really also interesting in our findings, that almost 40% of the time that person was dispatched on site, they needed help in order to finish their task, in order to prevent a follow-on truck roll.
Yeah.
Okay, 40%. So then it's like, okay, so like, what did you do in those cases? Well, I do pick up my phone or FaceTime, or I Skype, and it would be a call out of the workflow, just into a friend, into another field tech, into the service desk, and it's, hey, I've got a problem. Can you help me finish this so I could kind of leave here
Yep.
without and finish the job. And I said, sure. Why don't you tell me what you see, right? And it's cables, wires, blinking lights, and that that time after time led to follow-on truck roll. Okay, yeah, I can't really tell, so forth. So part of this, we changed that conversation from tell me what you see to show me what you see. Okay,
Yep.
and what we found is that 50%, right, they're able to solve the problem through visual context. Okay, with some AR guidance complementing the live video as a
Sure.
for instance, right?
Sure.
So what we're hearing is access to information when they need it in various forms, We are hearing, it's timely, the topic here, if you're, the podcast here, right? We're hearing a lot of asks for self-service. Okay, let me perform these tasks on my own, right?
Sure.
Give me the tools, and that is a extremely hot area for us,
Yeah.
right now. So there's actually, and then I'll say there's two parts to that, and we can kind of take it anywhere you want to go.
Yeah.
But one is, okay, I need to consume this instructional content. That's what they're asking for. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The other is, okay, that's great and all, but how do you build that? How do you create that? And how do you do it in a way where you could do it at scale? So there's another piece to that. But so we're seeing a lot of that too. But everybody, we're seeing a lot of apps in the field is give me instructions that are contextual, that let me do this that kind of reduces the skills gap, right? Helps also me ramp as well.
Yeah. I think you bring up a lot of good points, Sam. We still see a dependency on phoning a friend and phoning a colleague, in terms of when they're stuck, what are they doing most commonly? And we see organizations aiming to build infrastructure behind that in terms of creating support and collaboration across the team, whether it's back office to the front line, or frontline to the manufacturer if there's a subcomponent that they need troubleshooting on, or having not only the ability to speak with them but text with them and
Right.
collaborate with them. So we see a
Right.
lot more of that. We see a dependency on service manuals and the information, but to your point, we see an evolution towards creating context around those manuals, right? Those paper-based manuals, the thick dictionaries that are out there that still exist. How do you put context behind that in terms of exploding diagrams and more digitizing of those manuals and knowledge-based articles that can be helpful for the front line? So a lot of evolution there, and you brought up another critical point, the focus and emphasis on parts. We continue to see a craving from the front line for the ability to see where parts are, inventory visibility, the ability to order parts, the ability to share parts in terms of borrowing from a colleague or from other parts of across the organization. So those are just some of the things that our research is telling us.
Yeah, parts. Parts is coming up a lot, these days, and I think it's just because we're maturing. Just the space is maturing, and it's like, okay, the next area, the next frontier of how do you solve? What do you do in this case? You run across an object or an asset, and you don't know what it is, or if you do, you don't necessarily know what to do with it, how to repair, replace it, right? How many in inventory do I have? How can I source that easily? All within the same workflow, all within the same experience, right? So they can do their job better versus having to do this all kind of as silos. And ultimately, if we could help that that tech in the field perform their job more effectively, then the output of that is going to be a better customer experience, right? There's always that recipient on the other side who's receiving this better experience, right? So we there's two sides to the coin, the one delivering and the one receiving, right? But but to maybe touch on this other part around paper, okay, that you mentioned, right? So paper is this other pervasive issue that we're seeing. There's a tremendous amount of paper or static content within organizations, and a lot of the service organizations that we work with today, or enterprises that have large service organizations, are are historically paper-based forms, paper, things like that. We've got one customer in particular that this is just really interesting. So they service a variety of large chain type of organizations. So think about 10,000 establishments of the same kind across the country, and they have a lot of them, right? And what they do is they utilize third-party contractors to implement a standard set of configuration across these different systems, these
Sure.
different locations. And so what they do is they have first higher skilled resources of their own do the first maybe 5 to 10, and then what they do is they create a package, and that package consists of paper with pictures. Okay, and they here you go. Now go. They take that to a couple hundred of these third parties to go do several thousands of others. Godspeed. Now go do that in a very short period of time. And guess what? People don't follow instructions. They don't.
Yep.
They take shortcuts, and it creates it triggers more SLAs and it creates more SAT issues. The other thing that happens always is that things change in this static document. Okay, a new part or a process may change, and so what do they have to do? They have to redo the whole thing and send it back out again.
Sure.
Okay, wouldn't there be a great way if hey, I could just have this as a digital experience, and I could just serve this up via a QR code, and anybody with a mobile device can just consume it that way. And if something changes, I could just change it within the application, and everyone automatically just has the latest and greatest. But that's to the point, right? That you're making is that how do you there's this whole transformation. There's service transformation. There's content transformation. There's a lot of stuff going on in the technicians, these enterprises that are trying to roll out a better customer experience, or service experience, out in the field are dealing with.
Sure. So let's circle up to the topic of today's podcast. Great points, by the way. The concept of instructional guidance. Okay, so we hear a lot more, and we've talked about some of the issues why, which is service leaders are tasked with doing more with less, and so there's a big focus on quality and throughput and utilization because, quite honestly, there's a scarcity of talent to support customer demands. So so we've seen this focus on guided workflows. This has become a popular term, which links very closely to instructional guidance, if you will, in terms of creating process rigor, supplementing information and knowledge so that you can guide them through the process of service delivery. And I guess for our listening audience, I'd love if we can together establish some definitions for what does instructional guidance mean. And I have a couple follow-up questions that I'll put behind that.
Okay, so for us, instructional guidance is in the self-service family. So it is a self-guided instructional content that a user can walk through step by step process in order to complete a task, to complete a set of tasks or to complete a task, right? So self-guided instructions that are step by step that walk somebody through completing a task.
Outstanding. That's helpful. And
sometimes the most simplest thing is the hardest thing to explain, but that's how we net it out.
Yeah, that's outstanding. And so let's build on that in terms of can instructional guidance be universally deployed? So can it be both deployed to your service workforce and to the customer? Is because we see a lot of customers seeking to self-serve, right? But that DIY experience has to become more sophisticated with instructional guidance, and so doesn't that of the workforce who's delivering the service in the event that they're dispatched to support an issue or something of that nature. So is your viewpoint that instructional guidance is kind of universal in terms of both helping the customer as well as the service worker? Is that a true statement?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. That's exactly where we see the need too, and that drives both the the customer experience as well as the employee experience, right? So the employee experience, whether that's the service worker, right? And then the customer experience, because look, I mean, and I'll tell you just a fantastic use case that we see, right now that is, that I think is a pretty hot area, and I think everybody's experiencing this who has internet at home, so which is like everybody, I think, I hope, but that's it's a terrible and painful experience, and whenever we talk to to a C-suite, if you will, everybody always talks about their experience that they've had with getting internet or cable. It's unfortunate, but that's what people point to. But if you think about it, right, in order to do that, you've got to schedule somebody to come out to your home, and that takes days, if not weeks, typically. Okay.
Yep.
And then the time it takes for somebody to be there, you've got to wait. You got to wait for that person to show up. They it takes them a while, and that's just a process that nobody likes. Now, what if a modem gateway, a 5G mobile gateway, can just be sent to your house with a QR code that you can just consume and walks you through, unbox, onboard, set it up, and you can do that all on your own. So that creates a great customer experience. On the service side, the last thing a service provider wants to do is send out somebody in a truck. It costs money. They can be used for other things, but self-guided instructions, that's one example, and it's a popular one right now. But how can self-guided instructions be used from a consumer perspective, right? So they could be empowered to do things on their own without having to talk to a human, without having to wait for somebody, but just get that immediate gratification that I talked about earlier. That's one of the drivers, and let them perform those tasks and get the knowledge that they need on the spot in order to perform that task. So we're seeing a significant uptick in various consumer or even end user within businesses, right? To have that same type of use case, same type of empowerment experience to do that in an office setting as well.
Outstanding. I'd like to circle back to a topic, go a little bit off script, around training, because you brought it up, and we've been talking a little bit about how AR and visual support technologies can be a strong function of knowledge capture and supporting training and all the good things that are helping to aid in the development of the future workforce, if you will. One of the impediments, so we always talked about visual support technologies as a category impacting operational efficiency, right? That throughput can be created, utilization rates can increase because of this upskilling and reskilling, which is aiding the technician solving first visit, mean time to repair, all the critical KPI that we talk about. But the other benefit of visual support technologies is around the knowledge capture to train the future workforce. There's a huge element of that, but it's been a challenge for some organizations in terms of content creation through AR. Can you talk about how you're aiding in that training process and where you see AR making the biggest impact?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one for us as well, because again, as a space matures, right, more areas become to kind of be brought into the fold. So I'll touch on a couple of things as it pertains to the training piece, but one is, so let's just start with the easy stuff. You have a remote AR visual session. Okay. What happens? You've got somebody performing a task. You've got an issue and you've got a resolution. Okay. Issue and resolution. On our platform, we capture that content. Okay. So we could capture pictures, but we also capture that recording. Okay, that recording is now used for organizations to use for training purposes.
Yep.
Okay, so that just creates content. So we call we talk about the use of remote AR support, solving problems, better, faster, cheaper. But what we're also doing is we're enabling the creation of content. We're creating that content to be used for either training, part of knowledge base, right? That also aids, but training is a big part of. They start to curate. Organizations are starting to curate this content that could be used. Okay, then there's the self-guided instructions that we've started to talk about. Okay, that's also content that's used on the job, in the field, but then also be used for training, to reinforce and to help hone in skills. The military has a term. We're working with some areas in the military called sets and reps. Okay, which is, hey, when I'm not in the field, or I'm not active, right, I can start to practice situational training, if you will. But self-guided instructions allows those individuals to have a better understanding of the situation before one actually occurs. And now we kind of bring it all together around enabling techs in the field to create content, what we call in the field on the fly. Okay, so content, we feel, is a continuum. Okay, yeah. There's content that pre-exists that we bring in to create an instructional experience. There's new content that's created during every remote AR session, and then there's content that gets created as a self-guided instructions that gets created within those enterprises, but now like in the field on the fly, and you bring all that together. And then there's another piece which was really interesting, where the content started to get created by the technicians in the field and the service leaders, etc. But what we started to see now is training and learning and development functional areas within organizations have started to take over, and they're the ones really creating that content for these new employees being ramped, as well as reinforcing some of these new best practices for existing personnel. And it's a great example at Xerox, where they're now doing that, making this content available virtually. So they're saving a lot of expense, not having to fly people into a location, and now being available virtually, but also on an on-demand basis or on the spot, right? So a lot of this is really kind of coming together. It's pretty fluid, but very quickly coming together, all in the way of how to provide better tools, better help for these people that are providing a really hard job.
Outstanding. Yeah, thanks for that walkthrough. That's good instructional guidance on how to use AR for the purpose of reforming your training programs. That's pretty cool. So let's talk about one of the areas that's a big challenge and remains a challenge, which is the integration of technology into process workflows and getting started on an instructional guidance, transformation. One of the things that we still hear is, the integration of the technology into the process workflows. Service leaders are pointing to that as at a rate of 40% of the time is the biggest impediment to a successful digital transformation. So integrating that process workflow together with the technology experience that's being improved. Can you talk about the steps that organizations can take to effectively launch an instructional guidance program or transformation?
Yeah. And that's the the long pole in the tent that we're finding is really bringing this process. There's the process, there's change management, okay, and then there's actually creating the content. Okay. And all this was good, but it keeps coming back to but how do you create the content? And do I have to hire an army to do it? Can I do it myself? We get that a lot, right?
Yeah.
But you need to think about it around how to organize the content that you have, first of all. And you need to think about the various tasks we want our people to do. Okay, and then it's like, okay, what content do we have today, and what content do we have to create? And so that's a big part. A big first step is really identifying what are the tasks that you want people to do, what are the
Sure.
content that you need to create, what do you have to work with right now, what do you need to what do you want to create? Okay, so we have services that help organizations really accelerate this whole effort in their service transformation journey.
Mm-hmm.
And we offer that in a very, very simple way. The other thing that really I would say has been a game changer, I'll say, are two things. One is we introduced a designer tool that is no code, and that allows really anyone to create instructional self-guided experiences at scale. So we really think we've kind of democratized the ability for organizations, but more importantly, like anyone within organizations, to create instructional content on their own. And that has been I think really kind of game changing for us. We introduced that last year, and it's so simple, John. We just give people the tool, and it's so intuitive. They're able to create these instructional experiences on their own. And
Outstanding.
and so that's been taken off, and we've really worked hard and continue to work hard to continue to introduce more tech into that. The other and so we talked about AR. AI kind of works its way into this by now being able to provide verification, so visual verification on an object, an image, a state. Okay, so when I'm performing my step-by-step instruction, so I have a task, and let's say the task has 10 steps.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, each step has to be done. Now look, there are simple things, simple tasks, and then there's complicated tasks. Okay, and not every task you need to incorporate sophisticated technology with, right? But in an example, let's just say that it requires, especially when you're using third-party contractors, right, who may not have done that before, or you got a new resource who've come in to the job, and their skills gap. So in whatever the event, but imagine if each step you have the ability through your mobile device to assess with a high level of accuracy, did I perform that step correctly, accurately, and you get a verification, and then at that point the next step gets served up. And if you haven't, right, the system will tell you you've not, and will prompt you to do it again. So if you take that through each of those steps, and at the end, right, I not only look at each object, and is the cable plugged into the right port, is the knob turned the right way, and then I look at the completed state of my task, and I'm able to determine, yep, that's been completed successfully, validated, and all that. And so number one, it provides a very high level of consistency and accuracy as
Mm-hmm.
part of these instructions, as an aid, as a tool. And then all that information, each step, if you will, can be saved for compliance purposes back into the system of record. So you have a compliance piece of this as well. And that kind of provides the whole, assistance, guidance, and compliance, all part of kind of this workflow that that we feel really lends itself to providing not just a better solution, right, but a smarter solution, and in some cases even safer when you bring into some of these manufacturing or remote type of requirements.
Outstanding. Thank you for the overview. What a great roadmap for our listening audience to consider as they embark on a similar journey. Let's go to, we talked about service experience or experience management being improved and how it's universal for both customers and employees. And we believe, like many, that employee experience and customer experience are just inextricably linked, right? That you can't separate the two. There's so many parallels between how you approach it, how you measure it, and so on and so forth. Do you share? I know you share that viewpoint. We've already talked about it, but how do you define best-in-class experience? What are you hearing from customers alike in terms of what is true north in terms of experience improvement and experience altogether?
Yeah. So, you mentioned a bunch of KPIs earlier, right? Those are
Yeah.
those are some of the foundational, ones. But I would say, look, what we found is that different organizations are in different stages of their journey, of their,
Yep.
customer experience journey, service experience, journey, right? So it's really different
Hmm.
for different organizations. Some just want to take trucks off the road. Okay, look, I want to take 10%, 20%, 40% of trucks off the road and improve my operational experiences that way. Okay. What's also interesting, if you take a truck off the road, you're saving on kind of the ESG bucket around carbon emissions, right? So that's another byproduct, which is, by the way, also another type of KPI that organizations are getting into. But so we find from a journey perspective, or for some of the best practices, right? It's around like, I would probably say, the low hanging fruit. What we see consistently is around, can I deflect the dispatch, and can I reduce resolution times?
Yeah.
Those are the main thing. And if you can do that, there's a bunch of byproducts that kind of a ripple effect that start to happen as well. I mentioned,
Yeah. Yeah.
around sustainability and emissions, but you get to the first time resolutions faster, right? And customer, and then if you start doing these things, guess what? Customers are going to be happier,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so you mentioned you've got the customer experience. Employee experience is really something that we don't hear enough about.
Yep.
But we think a lot about that employee as well, that service employee who's delivering, who's being enabled or empowered to deliver a better experience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How does that, how do they feel about that?
Yeah, yeah. I think you talk about a number of critical KPI that are causal in nature to erosion of sentiment, right? So, like when
Hmm.
we look at, if we isolate CSAT or customer sentiment, we've seen this evolution from satisfaction to net promoter. How was your experience? Rate your experience. Would you recommend us, to now effort, right? There's this effort
Hmm.
orientation. How difficult or how easy was it for you to seek and receive support today? And the same should be that should be the same approach internally, right? How easy can we remove friction from the employee
Right.
experience, which of course translates into the customer experience, right? So we hear a
Hun-
lot of
hun-
focus on that.
100%. And just think about, dealing with any kind of, service provider or manufacturer. And in the case, when you received a great service experience, and
Yeah,
those that you received a horrible service experience, right? It makes such an impact, right? Like, "Oh,
absolutely.
I don't want to deal with them again. They were
Yeah,
terrible," right?
yeah,
Versus, hey, this is a delight.
yeah,
And one of the things that we're seeing more and more about is now we're working with manufacturers. So we think about, and we also we kind of bucketize our customers in two ways: those that service a product, and those that make a product.
yep,
And if you think about those that make a product, right? How do I deliver that product, with a better experience to those consumers or businesses buying that, right? One of the ways that
yep,
we're doing it is by providing these self-guided instructions inside. And Xerox is one example where every new Xerox product is now rolled out with a CareAR self-guided instructional, actually digital twin companion. And so think about that. So there's a QR code for every new device, and now any consumer of that now new customer can take a product tour as well as look at a variety of how-tos. So I don't have to call into the service desk, right? I could do these things on my own. And this just kicked off this past March. Okay, so it's pretty exciting. And there's a survey as part of this application that's totally optional, but people are responding to it, and it's 4.9 out of 5. And it's, wow, what a great experience. This is fantastic. I'll buy another product again from Xerox and so forth. So we're doing this for others, by the way. So we're seeing more and more of things like that around self-guided instructions, more content around, better serviceability, better experiences around, for customers for employees.
Outstanding. So can we talk about the future state? What's happening going forward? What's the next wave of growth in terms of service innovation? We've heard a lot about ChatGPT and AI and all this other stuff and how it relates to the service experience. What's next for CareAR, and what's next for the broader service segment in terms of, what's the future state look like?
Well, I hate to say it, John, but there's a lot of work still to be done within this field service domain, if you will. But I would say that within that, there's a greater need and a greater focus around delivering self-guided service experiences at scale. Okay, so we really feel that is an area of high interest and high growth for us, not just delivering it, but helping organizations create these experiences and leveraging the content that they have, as well as creating new immersive type of instructional content like digital twin, etc. So we see more and more of that across a variety of industries. So we're pretty excited to be able to to be in a position where we're really driving this, making an impact. The other thing that is also really exciting too is we're also we've talked about the customer experience, we talked about employee experience, as this pertains to kind of the service experience category. But you and I have had experience on a recent conversation, and we'll have a follow up on there's a June 28th.
That's right.
Webinar that we're doing.
Yeah.
Right, so a little plug for us.
Yeah.
But it's around healthcare and how we're helping to impact the patient experience. Yep. Right, which there's a whole story there, and it is amazing, and at the same time it's heartfelt what patients have to go through, especially those that that have a physical impediment around how they have to deal with things, and how we can impact and make the patient experience better for those. Yeah. Just hits on a different level, right? And so to answer your question, areas like healthcare and the patient experience, that's a new frontier for us, and we're excited to really help deliver a better patient experience.
Outstanding. Yeah, and Sam highlights an upcoming event, a really exciting one to build off of our coverage of the patient experience. We had one of our most popular podcasts, Linda Tucci, one of our industry practitioner advisory boards from Ortho Clinical Diagnostics, now Kydell Ortho, is going through her own personal health battle and journey with her recovery from cancer, and just a beautiful discussion with her colleague around the lack of compassion and the opportunities to improve the patient experience. And we're going to build off of this discussion and that with a webinar on June 28th at 1 p.m. So mark your calendars, complimentary webinar, how examined Med and Shepherd Center are exploring healthcare transformation with AR. It's at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And so feel free to join us as we continue the dialogue and showcase how the technology is enabling the healthcare industry. So Sam, last question. The value, we are so humbled. Thank you for being a board member. Our partnership has always been very valuable to us. What is the value you get from the relationship? And maybe one thing about you personal that the audience doesn't know, or something you're looking forward to, or something personal that you can share with our audience to get to know you a little better.
Sure. So, the Service Council, has been really, invaluable to us. Being able to, to share, stories and get perspective and outlook from others in the same space, right, is really huge. Being able to really keep our fingers close to the pulse of the service space, right, is something that we're just getting value from, on an ongoing basis, right? So staying very close to everything that you and your organization does is really key for us to really help shape our product, shape our offering, shape the direction of what we do. So we get a lot out of that, and I'm just happy to have the opportunity to contribute in the way that we are, and then helping to to share our story with your members, right? Which is really, really big. Boy, for me personally, look, I personally, so I'll share one thing. So I'm an avid griller. Okay, so on my downtime, I like to grill all kinds of things. I have this green egg for any of you who and by the way, I have no affiliation with the green egg, but it's an amazing product. You can and it's great because you can't really mess too many things up. So I like to do that in free time, and the beauty of it just takes a long time to to cook your food on it. So there's gives you a lot of opportunity to do other things, but grilling. So grilling and golf, John. We talked about golf earlier, so that's an ongoing challenge. But those are my two passions outside of my family.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. We're gonna have to exchange notes on the grilling. I love to grill, and in Boston, sometimes we grill even through the winter. So that's just how we roll up here. So, well, listen, he's Sam Waicberg. He's the president and co-founder of CareAR, a Xerox company. Sam, this has been a really enjoyable dialogue. Thank you so much for the partnership. Thank you for your time today. Join us on June 28th. His organization will be sponsoring a webinar featuring really great two customers and partners of CareAR in terms of how they're innovating around the service experience within the healthcare and patient experience. Sam, thanks for being a board member. Thanks for joining us today. I really enjoyed the dialogue.
It's my honor, John. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you to our listening and participating audience. We'll see you on the next episode. And this is available on whatever channel you subscribe to. You can grab it from our website. Thank you for joining. Hopefully it was a useful session for you. Thanks. Take care.